All right, everybody. I'm going to give a big shout out to Open Fortune today for making this possible. Open Fortune flipped the fortune cookie on its head by creating relationships and partnerships with 47,000 restaurants, reaching 99% of zip codes, and honestly just making ads pretty cool. So shout out to Open Fortune for bringing us here today. Hey everybody, and welcome back to How the Fuck Did You Get That Job, where we uncover the unique career journeys of today's professionals and where I, your enthusiastic host, can't wait to get the lowdown on their paths to success. Joining us today is Kourtny Shaw, a marketing dynamo whose career spans various facets of the digital world. Kourtny launched her academic pursuit with a BA in marketing and communication from Webster University, further enriching her profile with an MA in new media and digital production from Webster University. Kourtny's professional path kicked off at Mark Andy Inc. as a marketing specialist. She then delved deeper into the digital realm as a digital marketing and analyst at CCA Global Partners, sharpening her analytical and strategic skills. Her journey continued at 3Cloud, an IT consulting company, where she honed her expertise in tech-centric marketing. In parallel to her corporate roles, Kourtny has been making waves as a senior level consultant for Ride Side Up, a marketplace that's a hub for freelance marketing talent. And alongside this, she holds a pivotal role currently in academia as the director of marketing at Southwestern Illinois College. So, Kourtny, how the fuck did you get that job?
It has been a really exciting journey. I feel like I've gotten, with every career, every path that I've taken, I've really kind of gotten very lucky where I've gotten to really dive in and do a little bit of everything, which I think has prepared me to excel the way that I have.
Totally. So when you were growing up, like as a kid, what did you want to be?
I wanted to be a writer. I was like a Harry Potter kid. I was obsessed with, I didn't have friends. I hung out in my room and read books. So I wanted to go into writing and yeah.
And so when you were going to college, what did that decision process look like for you?
I went to Webster and I said, I originally went and wanted to do journalism, and then I spoke to some of the people in the journalism program and they were like, don't do it.
What were their reasonings?
I think, at that time people thought journalism was dying. And so it was like one of those situations where they were like, hey, like maybe don't go this way. And so I, talked to some other people that I knew, and I've always been really creative. I've always been really good with balancing kind of the analytical and the fun side. And so marketing just kind of seemed like a natural fit. And
also, like, I guess for me, and I like asking marketers this question, there was always like a favorite brand growing up or a brand that made you feel a certain way. What was that for you? My favorite marketing campaign of all time was Samsung. They did it's not just a Galaxy, it's a Samsung, and I don't know why, but that campaign it's so evergreen. It touches all of their product lines. It touches, anything they do that's in that Galaxy realm is just it's kind of crazy. I would have loved to have been in the meeting just to kind of see how that came apart. So are you an Android person then?
I'm not. I'm an Apple person.
Okay,
but that is still one of my favorite.
Good. Okay, we have one guy on the team, Ross, who is screwing up everything, but it's okay.
That group text message, green group text message.
That was I think that was actually my favorite marketing play, or not marketing, but product marketing that they did, was making it blue. It just. Anyway, so coming out of college, you end up realizing marketing might be for you. What are you doing? Are you on the job boards? How are you looking for that first gig?
I really actually started, even before I was at Mark Andy, I worked at a local swim school and I did marketing for them, and then was kind of just working. I was on Indeed almost every day. I was on LinkedIn almost every day trying to get my, resume out there. I was applying and interviewing for things that I was totally not qualified for. I was sucking at all of those interviews and just kind of going through the process until something stuck.
What advice would you give somebody who keeps on getting just denial letters after denial letters?
I would say,
spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, Indeed, all that stuff.
It's a little bit easier now because we have ChatGPT, so there's a lot of opportunity to kind of use those AI resources to kind of help you build up your resume and those cover letters. But I would say to just keep going. Working with recruiters, in my opinion, has always been easier just to kind of if you go on LinkedIn and find a recruiter, it's easier to have that human connection because they then have human connections, and you're not necessarily in a pool of just other paperwork essentially.
So what did you learn from that swim school experience and like first diving into your marketing job, and what were they having you do?
That was really just like social media and more like guerrilla marketing, kind of like going from like business to business with flyers, like really kind of bare bones basic stuff. And that was really challenging because I kind of had to learn it on my own and figure it out. You know, I started like email campaigns for them and got into kind of more succinct like marketing strategies, but it was really like building that confidence. It's always hard to kind of put that campaign together, even like a post on Facebook and like hit the big, you know, green go button. Yeah, it's like you have to build that confidence, and it's like something that you don't realize is hard until you're like sitting there like, what if this is wrong? What if this isn't like the direction? And you just kind of have to do it.
And you end up going to Mark Andy. That was an agency?
That was, so they're a global manufacturing brand. They actually manufacture printing presses, which I had no idea when I walked into that interview. I had really no idea what they did.
What does marketing look like for selling printing presses?
I mean, there's a lot of like sales enablement there. There's a lot of like trade show and like event stuff. And then it's really like, it sounds really boring, but it's actually kind of cool.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound like the sexiest business, but
yeah, no,
sometimes
I mean,
that's
like,
the best.
So like a beer can or like this was printed on a printing press. It's like stuff that you don't even think about, like anything you see in a grocery store. So it's like you like seeing the creativity that goes behind like the label making and stuff that they were doing. That was kind of cool.
Absolutely. So were you seeing digital as a huge opportunity for you to learn at this point?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, that's kind of where, I mean, so much has changed in the marketing industry. I mean, even from a year ago, but especially from then to now, like that's really when we started seeing that like huge shift in digital. And so it was like you either get on or like get out, like.
And how were you teaching yourself? Were there mentors that were helping you, or was this mostly self-taught?
You know, there were mentors. Like I had a CMO there. I guess he was really the VP when I was there of marketing. He was really good at kind of empowering the team to be creative and do what they wanted to do and take really full ownership of like each person got like their own product line. And so that was your product line from strategy to implementation to really put together like a really like beefy marketing campaign. And so he was really good at kind of walking us through that. But a lot of it was just like getting on and finding resources and looking to see what like competitors were doing, or getting on like marketing agency websites and seeing kind of what they were doing too.
And at this point, were you certain that like marketing was going to be your career path, or were you still 50-50?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty sold at that point. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of a tough job because it's like you have to balance like the fun and like creativity with like the serious stuff too. So it's like really hard to, especially like, you know, there's always like do you go agency side or do you go corporate side? And so that was a different, like kind of a push too, like because agency is so different than if you work on like a corporate marketing team, as far as like hours and
what do you prefer?
I'm corporate all the way. I think sometimes it's hard to
And by
work.
corporate you mean brand?
Yeah, so it's hard to work on the agency side just because you have so much going on. I mean, I've done both. You know, working in consulting, I've been on either side. I just think it's a little bit easier to fully wrap your head around one succinct brand than it is to like have multiple things going on at the same time.
What would you say? Are there any downsides, or really just pro brand?
I mean, I guess your downside is that you don't get experience with, you know, kind of the multiple different brands and companies that you would if you were on the agency side. So I think it just depends on what pace you want. Fast pace is really fun when you're like young and new and you're learning, but you know, some people do better with kind of the slower, like singular side of it.
And you ended up moving over to CCA and 3 Cloud.
Yep.
What did you learn? What was the biggest thing you learned from both those experiences?
You know, I think the biggest thing that I learned, especially at CCA, because that was really my first, you know, I had done stuff on the analytics side before, but I had never kind of fully committed to that. And so that was kind of like SEO, analytics, like I did a lot with like paid search. And so I really had to learn very, very quickly how to navigate those tools that I had only kind of worked with before. And so I really had to like dive headfirst right into it. And, you know, that's really where I kind of saw my career take off, was when I really kind of got into, you know, like the Google marketing suite and working more closely with like Adobe and stuff like that.
And how do you go at this point? You're more senior, right? You probably have a couple of direct reports, and now you definitely do. Like, how would you describe your leadership style, and what do you look for in new hires?
I'm pretty easygoing as a leader goes. You know, I have had managers who have been like super micromanaging, and I've had managers who have just kind of been like, oh, do whatever you want. And so I think it's like a balance between the two. Way before I got into marketing, I worked at Family Video, and one of the regional managers had this like motto that like people don't quit jobs, they quit people. And so that's kind
I've
of
heard that,
how,
quit bosses.
Yeah, like that's how I've kind of modeled my leadership style is like be a support system, make sure like if your team is not succeeding, that means you're not succeeding. And so kind of modeling everything off of that mindset is just kind of, yeah.
And so you end up going into the higher ed, you know, that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
Why was that so interesting to you? And I have a ton of questions that we're going to dive into.
You know, I think what interests me the most, you know, I have a passion for education. I have a higher degree. It's something that if a doctorate was kind of worth my time in this career field, I would do it, but it's expensive and I can't really do anything with it. So it's like, you know, one of those things. But I also think like where I'm at in my life, like going into higher ed, it's, you know, a little bit more lenient. You're able to balance having a family, and I have a 4-year-old, so it makes it a little bit easier there. But I think just kind of the opportunity to work with students in a time where like higher ed is kind of like a taboo thing right now. So.
Absolutely. And so how old is the school?
They started in 1946. So.
Right. So you're inheriting, I asked a couple people this question before, but you're inheriting a brand that, I'm not going to do the math, but is over 70 years old,
yeah.
Right? How do you go about like taking the character and what it was built on and the values, but also, you know, being creative and pushing boundaries?
It's really a challenge to do that because you have a lot of people who are, you know, have been with this brand in the school for a very long time. And so they're looking at it, let's stay traditional, let's keep with what we're doing. But I think they're also recognizing, and I'm helping them recognize that like we really need to push forward to stay top of mind with like students because, you know, Gen Z and all that follow, they're very media centric. It's a different game, and we have to stay up to date or we're going to get lost. And I mean, just given the area that we're in, like enrollment will stay consistent, but if we really want to like push it, we really have to kind of do bigger, better things to really drive enrollment.
And what about Southwestern Illinois, like kind of sold you on their vision, and what were their pain points that they were looking for you to solve?
I think what sold me was that they were willing to like find somebody. So the person who I kind of replaced had retired before me. He was a PR guy. He was a communications guy. He was not really a marketer in the digital sense. And so the fact that that's what they were looking for is what really kind of sold me on it, is that they had the mindset to go out and say like, we know we need this. And I think the pain points that we're kind of working through now are really like, okay, like we know we need it, but like, I need you guys to say yes. And so I think that's kind of the challenge in a lot of these situations where like you get into a role and they're ready and willing to do all these cool things, but they maybe don't understand it. And so it's kind of like pushing through that like fear almost and saying like, I promise I got you, like we're gonna do it, it's gonna be great. And if it's not, it's really not that big of a deal.
Well, that's all you can ask for, right?
Yeah.
There are, when you're, I forget the guest, I think Elias Martinez, who was on, who's Texas State VP Marketing, but he was saying it's like the longest sales cycle of any just brand. Like how does your marketing adhere to that?
So we have marketing at SWIC is really interesting. So we have the recruiting team, which works really, really closely with the marketing team. And so really from a prospecting, like from the top of that funnel, from the top of that sales cycle, that's kind of the recruiting side. And so from a digital standpoint, we haven't even touched them until they kind of go through that process with recruiting. And then they come to us and we're kind of the support system to kind of push them through to the end in conjunction with admissions and kind of how that rolls. So the cycle is really different. You know, when you look at kind of the corporate or like even e-commerce stuff, that's like so quick. You get like that instant gratification and you really know that what you're doing is worthwhile. But like to follow a prospective student like all the way through, not only enrollment, but graduation, like it's like a 2 to 4 year process, so.
Absolutely. And so when you're balancing, right, performance, brand awareness, all those different levers, right, how are you judging success on all of them?
The thing, you know, that SWIC kind of and one of the things that I'm bringing to the table is that data proponent, because they haven't really used data in the past, and they haven't really built out those
paid.
Just kind of like any like KPIs, they're not really measuring anything against KPIs. So like part of what I'm doing is building the strategy really from a go-to-market perspective from the ground up. And so like we're building these dashboards right now, and we're looking at what's important, and we're looking at like what do we measure. And part of it, you know, from a brand perspective is, you know, our reach and where we're at in the market. But then when we look at, you know, from like those paid search and from those like digital tactics that we're just now starting, like we have to really think about like what's valuable to us, and like where, you know, we don't necessarily have the greatest website right now. So we're trying to like navigate all of this at the same time. And it's really like, that's kind of the challenge, is like figuring out where, you know, from like the cabinet level up, like where they are kind of wanting us to be.
Your audience is interesting because you're speaking to 15, 16, 17-year-olds, but you're also speaking to their parents, which are in 30s, 40s, you know, even 50s.
Yeah.
How does your messaging differ to both?
You know, I think...
And how do you think about that?
We have to think about it from, you know, what's important from a parent perspective, like what are parents really interested in knowing about their child's college experience, and then you have to look at it from like what is the student's perspective and what do they care about. And they are completely different messages, and they're also completely different platforms. So like we wouldn't put out on Facebook the same thing we would put out on Instagram, the same thing we would do on email. Like I wouldn't necessarily always email a student. Like we have other ways to get a hold of them. They're not really checking their email, and that's when we look at things like TikTok and you know, like WhatsApp is like really big and with a lot of colleges right now too. So it's like there are different platforms that you have to leverage depending on the messaging.
Absolutely. We talked a lot about your career. I want to talk to you about you as a person as well. Like, what are some things that you're just super proud of in life?
You know, I'm a mom of a 4-year-old. That's probably the coolest thing
Daughter,
I've ever
or?
done. Yeah, daughter.
Yeah.
So that's been, you know, really, really exciting. Before that, you know, we like flipped a house. That was a really cool thing to do. You know, I'm big on like experiences. So I spend a lot of time just like out and about in the St. Louis area with my family, and you know, kind of a little bit basic, but that's okay.
You got any pets?
I do. I have 4 dogs. I have 4 dogs. I have 3 dachshunds and 1 black lab. My goal is to have a fleet of dachshunds, and I think my husband might leave me if that happens.
Oh man, I got 2 dogs at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love them. But I think that's a good place to wrap up. And I wish I wore my dachshund t-shirt. I literally have it here in the hotel, but next time.
Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. Got to give a big shout out to Open Fortune for making this possible. Actually, I'll do a quick story time. My job, sometimes I have to Google fortune cookies and see what's going on. And there was a woman in Idaho State. She was trying to figure out where she was going to go for D1 volleyball. She got a fortune cookie, and it literally said you don't have to go far to be successful, and decided to stay in state at Idaho State instead of going to Virginia. Not making that up. It literally, when we landed, I saw that. So fortune cookies are cool. They tell the future, and yeah, let's crack one open. You want to crack one open with me? Let's see if it relates to the podcast.
Yeah. We have to open them at the same time. Good luck.
Yep. All right. What does yours say?
Mine is look within to find your path to success.
And who you got in the back?
And on the back, I have Illinois State University.
Dang, we actually didn't plan that. I have what is life without disappointments? Duolingo. So. Yeah, he just gets you. They're all like, he went hard on people. All the other ones are really optimistic. All right. Person you most want to sit down to dinner with, dead or alive?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think I'd have to say J.K. Rowling.
That's a good one. Favorite city in the world?
Ann Arbor, Michigan.
There you go. Speaking of Disney, just because Carla just went there, adventure parks or zoos?
Zoos.
Is it okay to sleep with socks on?
No. No, it is not.
Yeah, I don't know. You're wrong. Favorite rom-com?
Oh, man. Favorite rom-com? Mona Lisa Smile? Is that a rom-com? I don't know.
Actually, I haven't seen it. I need to see it. Is Santa real?
Yes.
In 40 years, what will people be nostalgic for?
Gosh, I don't know. What will people be nostalgic for in 40 years? Snapchat?
I'm already nostalgic for Snapchat. What's the Like literally, Sloan tried adding me on Snapchat, and I was like, I don't use that ever again. Anyway, what's the worst advice you've ever been given?
To stay home and not like participate in something. I don't know.
In one sentence, how do you sum up the internet?
Crazy.
It's a good one. It is crazy. And what's one thing that people don't understand about college marketing or higher ed marketing?
I think people don't understand the like bureaucracy behind it, and I think the like the process behind it. There's so many moving pieces that incorporate like just so much within the college.
And in 10 years from now, in 2033, where can we catch you? What are you going to be doing?
Hopefully, like running shit, like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the best answer we had. Well, I can't wait to see Kourtny running shit in 2033. I appreciate you coming on, and hope you had a good time.
All right.
Sweet.
Thanks.
Bang.
Okay, that is awesome.